She wasn't supposed to be there. She had come back early. Surprise. She'd bought jollof rice from the only Nigerian restaurant in Gangnam that did it right, packed it in a bag that was already going cold, and taken the private elevator up to his penthouse because she had a key and she was carrying his baby, and she actually thought that tonight was the night she would finally tell him. She was smiling when the elevator doors opened. She heard his voice before she saw anything. Low. Deliberate. The voice he used in meetings, not the one he saved for her. She means nothing, Hyun-suk. She was never part of the plan. Samantha stopped walking. The Brooks woman? Another voice. His most trusted lieutenant. She's useful. She was always just useful. The marriage to Chairman Yoon's daughter has been arranged for 2 years. Nothing changes that. Nothing. The bag slipped from Samantha's hand. She didn't hear it hit the floor. She couldn't hear anything past the sound of 8 months of her life being reduced to one word by the man she loved. Useful. She pressed her back against the wall. One hand found her stomach, that new instinct she hadn't even told anyone about yet. The other hand found her mouth, pressing hard, because the sound trying to come out of her was not a cry. It was something older than that. Something that lives beneath crying. She stood there for 41 seconds. She counted. Because counting was the only thing keeping her from walking into that room and letting him see exactly what he had just destroyed. Then she picked up the bag, quietly, straightened up, and walked back into the elevator. She rode down 17 floors in complete silence. And somewhere between the 9th floor and the lobby, Samantha Brooks stopped being the woman who loved Kang Hyun-woo and became the woman who would dismantle everything he had ever built. She just didn't know it yet. She still thought this was only heartbreak. My queens. Welcome to Epic Romance Stories. On today's episode, you'd get a dose of betrayal, power, romance, love, unexpected encounters, and a beautiful beginning. If this is your first time here, make sure to like, subscribe, click the notification icon to get a reminder when new amazing stories drop, and share this story to friends and family who you think would love to watch it. And also tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I love knowing where my girls are. Now, let's dive back into this amazing story. Samantha Brooks did not arrive in Seoul soft. She arrived with a reputation that had taken her 7 years to build, the kind that made senior partners twice her age sit up straight when she walked into a room. She was a forensic financial analyst, the best her firm had. And when Harrington and Cole sent her to Seoul to untangle the books of 3 of Korea's most quietly powerful conglomerates, it was not a compliment. It was a test. She passed every test they ever gave her. She had grown up in Atlanta, raised by a mother who worked double shifts and a grandmother who said, "Baby, the world will not hand you anything, so you'd better learn to take." She took. She studied harder than everyone. She dressed sharper. She arrived earlier. She was not the kind of woman who left room for doubt. And she had exactly 0 interest in Korean men. That part matters. Remember that part. Her 3rd week in Seoul, she was invited to a private dinner hosted by one of the conglomerates she was auditing. Rooftop venue. City lights. The kind of event where everyone is performing wealth and nobody is actually relaxed. She went because it was professional. She planned to stay exactly 90 minutes. She stayed 4 hours. Because of him. She noticed Kang Hyun-woo the way you notice a storm before it arrives. Something in the air changes. He wasn't the loudest man in the room. He was the opposite. He stood near the far railing, drink untouched, watching everything with the kind of stillness that made everyone else seem frantic by comparison. He was dressed simply for a man surrounded by people draped in designer labels. No jewelry. No performance. Just presence. She told herself she was not staring. She was observing. Professional habit. Then he looked directly at her across a rooftop full of people, like he had known exactly where she was standing the entire time. She looked away first. That bothered her for longer than she wanted to admit. He appeared at her side 11 minutes later. She clocked it because she clocked everything. "You've been watching the room all night," he said. No introduction. No small talk. "You're not enjoying yourself." "I'm working," she said. "At a dinner party. Some of us work everywhere." He was quiet for a moment. Then, what do you see when you watch a room like this? She glanced at him sideways. Who's performing? Who's afraid? Who owes who something they haven't paid back yet? Something moved behind his eyes. Interest. Real interest. Not the kind men perform when they want something from a woman. The kind that meant she had surprised him. And what do you see when you look at me? He asked. She turned and looked at him fully for the first time. Took him in. Then she said, a man who already knows the answers to all the questions he's asking. He smiled. Slow. Like it cost him something. Kang Hyun-woo, he said, extending his hand. Samantha Brooks, she replied, shaking it. And before you ask, yes, I'm here alone. No, I'm not lost. And no, I don't need anyone to show me around Seoul. I wasn't going to offer, he said. I was going to ask if you'd like to have an honest conversation. Everyone else here is lying about something. You seem like you'd find that exhausting. She found him exhausting. She also stayed until the rooftop closed. What started as one honest conversation on a rooftop was about to become the most important and most devastating connection of Samantha's life. But there was something Hyun-woo was carrying into every moment they shared together. A secret so heavy it had an expiry date. And my queens, that expiry date was coming faster than either of them knew. 3 months in, Samantha had a rule. Don't get attached. She repeated it to herself every morning like a prayer. On the subway to work. In the shower. In the quiet moments right after he called, and she'd hung up smiling at her phone like a teenager who didn't know better. Don't get attached, Samantha. But Hyun-woo had a way of making distance feel unreasonable. He never pushed. That was the thing. Most men, when they want something, lean in too hard and too fast and end up crushing it. Hyun-woo did the opposite. He created space and then filled it with something so quiet and so consistent that before you noticed, you had built your entire sense of comfort around his presence. He remembered everything she said. Every small thing. She mentioned once that she couldn't find good chin anywhere in Seoul. 2 days later, a sealed bag appeared on her desk at the office with no note. She knew it was him. She called him immediately. How did you even find chin in Seoul? I have resources, he said. Hyun-woo. Samantha. She could hear the smile in his voice. That restrained, almost reluctant smile that she had come to understand was the realest thing about him. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't mention it, he replied. And then, softer ever. She sat with that for a long time after she hung up. That was the moment she stopped lying to herself. She was attached. Completely. Helplessly. And for the first time in her adult life, Samantha Brooks decided to stop fighting something that felt this real. What she didn't know was that on the other side of that phone, Kang Hyun-woo was sitting in a room where a contract sat and signed on his desk. A marriage contract. Arranged 2 years before Samantha ever stepped off a plane in Seoul. An agreement between the Kang syndicate and Chairman Yoon's family that would merge 2 of the most powerful criminal networks in Korea under one name. His name. He had been postponing it for months. His lieutenants noticed. His mother called twice a week. Chairman Yoon's patience was not infinite. But every time Hyun-woo picked up that pen, something stopped him. Something that smelled faintly like shea butter and spoke too honestly, and had walked into the wrong conference room one afternoon and rearranged everything inside him without even trying. He put the pen down again. He told himself he had time. He didn't. 5 months in, she saw the other side of him for the first time. She had been working late. She always worked late when her phone rang with his name, and she answered with, "If this is another spontaneous midnight drive, I need at least 20 minutes. Come outside." His voice was different. Stripped of everything warm. She came outside. He was sitting in the back of an black car, jacket gone, sleeves rolled. There was a cut above his eyebrow that hadn't been there this morning. She got in without asking questions. She had learned that about him. Sometimes the kindest thing was silence. They drove for 40 minutes without a word. Then he said, "My father built this organization on the bodies of people who trusted him. I spent 15 years cleaning up what he left behind and trying to make something that didn't make me sick to look at." She waited. "Some nights it doesn't work," he said. She reached across the seat and took his hand. He looked down at it like he had forgotten hands could do that, could just reach for you without wanting something in return. You don't have to explain, she said. I know, he replied. That's why I called you. He turned his hand over and held hers properly. And they rode through the Seoul night like that, not speaking, the city blurring past the windows, and Samantha thought, this is what it feels like to be chosen. Not performed for. Not impressed. Just chosen. She fell the rest of the way in love that night. Quietly. Without ceremony. The way the most permanent things always happen. 6 weeks later she was pregnant. She found out on a Tuesday. Sat on the bathroom floor of her Seoul apartment for an hour. Then she got up, washed her face, and spent 3 days trying to figure out how to feel about it before she realized she already knew. She wanted it. She wanted him. She wanted the impossible, impractical, terrifying version of this life that included both. She decided she would tell him that Friday. She bought jollof rice from the only Nigerian restaurant in Gangnam that did it right. She took the private elevator up to his penthouse. She was smiling when the doors opened. She means nothing, Hyun-suk. She was never part of the plan. She heard it before she saw anything. And my queens, you already know what happened next. You felt it at the beginning of this story. But what you don't know yet is what Samantha did in the 72 hours that followed. Because that is where this story truly begins. Not in the ballroom. Not on the rooftop. Not even in that elevator riding down 17 floors with a broken heart and a secret she was now completely alone with. It begins in a hotel room at 2 a.m. with a laptop, 6 years of financial records, and a woman who had just realized that the most dangerous thing in Hyun-woo's empire wasn't his soldiers or his rivals or his carefully arranged marriage. It was her. It had always been her. She just needed the pain to show her that. My queens, pause real quick, drop a comment right now and tell me, did Hyun-woo deserve a chance to explain himself, or was Samantha right to move in silence? I want to see what you think before this story goes where it's going. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because what's coming in the second half of this story will have you talking for days. 72 hours. That's how long Samantha gave herself to fall apart. She booked a hotel room 2 kilometers from his penthouse, and she cried until her body had nothing left. She ordered room service she didn't eat. She stared at the ceiling at 3 a.m. with her hand on her stomach, and she had every conversation with him in her head that she would never have in real life. She screamed into a pillow once. Just once. Then on the 3rd morning she woke up, showered, ordered coffee, opened her laptop, and got to work. Because grief without direction is just suffering. And Samantha Brooks did not suffer without purpose. She had spent 8 months inside Hyun-woo's financial world. Not as a spy. Not as a plant. She had genuinely loved him, and he had genuinely trusted her enough to let her see things that no outsider had ever been allowed to see. Shell companies registered in 4 different countries. Offshore accounts cycling funds through legitimate real estate and import businesses. A financial architecture so elegant and so carefully constructed that most forensic analysts would spend years untangling it. She had understood it in 3 months. She had been helping him refine it for 5. Now she sat in a hotel room in Seoul and looked at everything she knew, everything she had quietly archived in her own encrypted drive, not for this moment, but because archiving was just what her brain did, and she asked herself one question. What does a woman do with a map to an empire? She didn't answer it that night. But she started drawing. The first call she made was to her best friend Zara back in Atlanta. Zara picked up on the 2nd ring, took one listen to Samantha's voice, and said, "I'm booking a flight." "Don't," Samantha said. "I need you to do something else for me. I need you to call Marcus." Silence on the line. "Sam. Marcus Chin is a..." "I know exactly what he is," Samantha said. "That's why I need him." Marcus Chin was the most quietly feared financial litigator in Southeast Asia. He operated in the space between legal and not quite, the kind of man who knew where every body was buried because he'd helped write the invoices. He and Samantha had crossed paths twice at international finance conferences. He had given her his card both times with a look that said, "If you ever decide to stop playing by the rules." She had kept both cards. She pulled one out of her wallet now and stared at it for a long time. Then she dialed. He answered on the first ring, like he had been waiting. Samantha Brooks, he said. I wondered when you'd call. I have something, she said. Something significant. How significant? She looked at her laptop screen. At the architecture of Kang Hyun-woo's entire empire laid out in front of her like a blueprint. Significant enough to make you very rich, she said. And someone else very finished. Marcus was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. When can you meet? But here is what Samantha did not account for. Kang Hyun-woo noticed everything. It was the thing she had loved about him, that terrifying attention. That radar he had for shifts in atmosphere and changes in pattern. He had built a criminal empire on it. He had survived 3 attempts on his life because of it. And when Samantha stopped answering his calls on a Wednesday morning, he felt it immediately. Not just the silence. The quality of the silence. He had gone to her apartment Thursday. Her neighbor said she hadn't seen her in 2 days. He'd checked her office, her keycard hadn't been used since Tuesday evening. He stood outside her building in the cold Seoul morning, and something moved through his chest that he didn't have a clean name for. He told himself it was concern. His lieutenant Hyun-suk watched him from the car and said nothing. But his jaw tightened. Because Hyun-suk knew something that Hyun-woo didn't know yet. He knew Samantha had been in the building that night. He had seen her come in on the elevator camera. He had seen her leave 12 minutes later with the jollof rice bag, still in her hand. He had reviewed the footage the next morning during routine security checks and gone completely cold. He had not told Hyun-woo. He was still trying to decide if that was the right call when Hyun-woo turned from the building and said quietly, "Find her." Not a request. Not a suggestion. Find her. Today. Hyun-suk nodded. And thought to himself, you have no idea what you started. Samantha met Marcus Chin in a private dining room in Itaewon on a Friday evening. He was already seated when she arrived. Slim. Unhurried. The kind of man who wore expensive watches and never checked them because time adjusted itself around him. She sat down, ordered water, and laid a single USB drive on the table between them. Marcus looked at it, then at her. Is that what I think it is? It's a complete financial map of the Kang Syndicate's offshore infrastructure, she said. 18 shell companies. 43 accounts across 7 jurisdictions. 3 years of transaction records I helped structure myself, which means I can annotate every single line. Marcus picked up the drive slowly. And what do you want in return? He asked. Not money, she said. He raised an eyebrow. I want control, she said. Specifically, I want the legitimate holding company at the top of his corporate chain. The one that owns the real estate, the imports, the licensed businesses. The one that looks clean on paper. I want it transferred into a new entity. My entity. Before he ever knows what happened. Marcus stared at her for a long moment. You're not going to destroy him, he said slowly. You're going to inherit him. I'm going to take what was already mine, she said. He just doesn't know it was mine yet. Marcus leaned back in his chair, and for the first time in that conversation he smiled. Full and genuine. Samantha Brooks, he said. I have been waiting 6 years for someone interesting to walk through my door. She did not smile back. I'm not interesting, she said. I'm motivated. There's a difference. Now are you in or not? He set the drive back on the table, reached into his jacket and produced a contract that Samantha immediately understood he had prepared before she arrived. He had known. He had known exactly why she was calling. She looked at the contract. Then at him. You prepared this before we met, she said. I prepared it the day you landed in Seoul, he replied simply. I always knew the day would come. I just didn't know what would finally push you. Something cold moved through her. You've been watching me? I've been watching Hyun-woo for 4 years, Marcus said carefully. You were just the most important variable I hadn't accounted for. She held his gaze. Long enough to decide. Then she picked up his pen and signed. What Samantha didn't know, what she couldn't have known sitting in that dining room in Itaewon, was that Marcus Chin had his own reasons for wanting the Kang Syndicate dismantled. Reasons that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with a debt Hyun-woo's father had never paid. She had just become a piece in a game that was much older than her heartbreak. And somewhere across the city, Kang Hyun-woo was sitting in his penthouse staring at a security still his team had pulled from hotel cameras, a grainy image of a woman checking into a hotel 2 kilometers from his building on a Tuesday night. He recognized the coat immediately. He recognized the bag she was still carrying. And for the first time in 15 years of running an empire that feared nothing, Kang Hyun-woo felt something collapse quietly inside his chest. Because he understood now what that bag meant. She had come to him that night. She had heard everything. He came to her hotel at midnight. She knew he would. That was the thing about loving someone long enough. You learn the exact shape of their instincts. She had checked out that morning and moved to a different hotel across the city. Not because she was afraid of him. Because she needed 4 more days, and she could not afford to feel what she always felt when he walked into a room. He stood outside her first hotel at midnight with no security. Just him. Which meant he was not there as Kang Hyun-woo, the syndicate boss. He was there as the man who was beginning to understand what he had done. The front desk told him she had checked out. He stood in that lobby for a long time. Long enough that the night manager got uncomfortable. Then he walked back out into the cold and sat in his car and did not start the engine for 40 minutes. Hyun-suk finally said, "Sir." "Don't," Hyun-woo said quietly. Hyun-suk closed his mouth. They sat in silence. Then Hyun-woo said she was pregnant. Wasn't she? Not a question. Hyun-suk went very still. "The bag," Hyun-woo said. "She came to tell me something. That's why she came. That's why she was smiling when she stepped off the elevator. I saw it on the footage. She was smiling." His voice dropped to almost nothing. "What did she hear, Hyun-suk?" Silence. "What did she hear?" Hyun-suk looked straight ahead through the windshield at the empty Seoul street. "Everything," he said. The word landed in the car like something physical. Hyun-woo did not move. Did not speak. Did not react in any of the ways Hyun-suk had braced for. He just sat there. Completely still. With the expression of a man watching something irreplaceable fall from a very great height and knowing with absolute certainty that there is nothing he can do to stop it from breaking. "Drive," he finally said. "Where?" "Anywhere. Just drive." 9 days after she signed Marcus Chen's contract, the first transfer went through. Samantha sat in her new hotel room and watched the confirmation appear on her screen and felt nothing. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Just the quiet mechanical click of something locking into place. The holding company that sat at the top of Hyun-woo's legitimate empire, KH Global Holdings, registered in Singapore, had just been acquired by a new entity. Brooks and Associates, registered in Delaware, majority shareholder one Samantha Brooks. It had been done through 4 layers of legal restructuring so clean that even Hyun-woo's best lawyers would spend weeks finding the seam. Marcus had been surgical. She had been precise. Together they had reached into the chest of the Kang syndicate and quietly removed its heart without leaving a mark on the skin. She closed the laptop. Put both hands on her stomach. "Okay," she whispered. To herself. To the baby. To whoever was listening. "Okay." She booked a flight back to Atlanta for the following Tuesday. She was done with Seoul. Or so she thought. He found her on a Monday. She was in the hotel lobby with her suitcase. 12 hours before her flight. And she looked up from her phone and he was simply there. Standing 10 feet away in a gray coat, no security, looking like a man who had not slept in 9 days. Which he hadn't. They stared at each other across that lobby for a long moment. The entire world continued around them, check-ins, rolling luggage, lobby music, and neither of them moved. Then he said her name. Just that. Samantha. The way he said it. "My queens," the way he said it. Like it was the only word he had left. Like everything he should have said for 8 months was compressed into those 4 syllables. She felt it move through her like something physical. She hated that. She hated that her body still responded to him like that, like he was a frequency she was permanently tuned to. "How did you find me?" she said. Not a question. A statement of resignation. "I never stopped looking," he said. "Hyun-woo. I heard you." He took 1 step forward. "That night. I know you were there. I know what you heard. And I know you came to tell me something that he stopped. Jaw tight. That I didn't deserve to hear. Not after what I said." She gripped her suitcase handle. "Don't," she said quietly. "Samantha. I said don't." Her voice broke on the second word. Just slightly. Just enough. "You don't get to find me in a hotel lobby and say my name like that and expect me to. I am leaving, Hyun-woo." My flight is tomorrow. I am going home. You're pregnant, he said. The lobby noise seemed to disappear. She stared at him. I'm right, he said. Aren't I? She didn't answer. Her silence was the answer. And watching it land on his face, watching him absorb the full weight of what he had thrown away, was the most painful thing she had experienced in 9 days of very painful things. It's mine, he said. Again, not a question. It's mine, she corrected quietly. Everything from here is mine. He flinched. Like she'd struck him. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he said. I'm not standing here expecting anything. I need you to know that what you heard, it wasn't. It was exactly what it sounded like, she said. You told your lieutenant I meant nothing. That I was useful. Those were your words, Hyun-woo. Your voice. Your words. He closed his eyes briefly. I know, he said. I know. Then you know why I'm leaving. She picked up her suitcase. The baby, he said. Please. Just tell me what you need. Anything. She stopped walking, turned back one final time, and looked at him, really looked at him. At the exhaustion carved into his face. At the way he was holding himself like a man bracing for a sentence. At the fact that underneath all of it, underneath the empire and the syndicate and the arranged marriage and every lie of omission, she could still see the man from the wrong conference room who had listened to her like her words mattered. That was the cruelest part. He was still in there. Take care of yourself, she said softly. Goodbye, Hyun-woo. And she walked out. She was in Atlanta for 6 weeks when the news broke. KH Global Holdings, the Singapore-registered parent company of the Kang Syndicate's entire legitimate operation, had been acquired in a hostile restructuring. The new majority shareholder had immediately frozen all operational accounts linked to the holding company, triggering an audit across all 14 subsidiary businesses. The Kang Syndicate's legitimate empire, the one that cleaned everything, that made everything legal, that made Hyun-woo untouchable, had gone completely dark overnight. The Seoul underworld did not understand what had happened. Hyun-woo understood immediately. He sat in his office and read the acquisition documents his lawyers had just sent over, and he found her name on the 3rd page, and he sat back in his chair, and for a very long moment, he said absolutely nothing. Then slowly, so slowly, something shifted in his expression. It moved through disbelief first. Then through the specific devastation of a man who has just realized that the person he underestimated was the most formidable person he had ever met. And then underneath all of it, something that had no business being there. Something that looked almost like awe. Hyun-suk, he said quietly. Sir. She took the empire. Hyun-suk said nothing. She didn't destroy it, Hyun-woo said slowly, almost to himself. She didn't expose it. She didn't use it as leverage. She just took it. Cleanly. Legally. From right underneath me. He set the documents down. She took the empire. He stood up from his desk. Book me a flight to Atlanta, he said. Hyun-suk looked up sharply. Sir, the Chairman Yoon's situation is not yet. Cancel the engagement, Hyun-woo said simply. The room went absolutely still. Sir, Chairman Yoon will not. Cancel it. His voice was quiet. Final. The voice that ended conversations. Whatever it costs. Pay it. Cancel it. And book me a flight to Atlanta. He picked up the acquisition documents one more time. Found her name. Pressed his thumb against it briefly like he was confirming something real. I have something that belongs to her, he said quietly. And she has something that belongs to me. It's time we had an honest conversation. Some women cry when they're broken. Some women run. Samantha Brooks built an empire. She didn't take revenge on the man who reduced her to a word. She took everything that word was built on and she made it hers. And somewhere over the Pacific, on a flight he had no guarantee would end in anything but a closed door, Kang Hyun-woo was finally learning the only lesson that had ever mattered. The most dangerous person in any room is never the one holding the weapon. It's the one who understood the architecture long before anyone thought to protect it. My queens, I need to know what you think. Was Samantha right to take the empire instead of walking away completely? And when Hyun-woo lands in Atlanta, should she let him in, or should she let him stand outside that door long enough to feel every single second of what she felt in that elevator? And the real question, the one I think you've been sitting with this whole time, did he ever truly love her? Or did love only become real for him when he realized what losing her actually cost? Drop it all in the comments. I want every opinion. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needed to hear it today. Subscribe if you haven't, part 2 is coming, and Hyun-woo in Atlanta is a whole different level of this story. You do not want to miss what happens when he knocks on that door. My queens, until next time.